IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin, Doctor, your habit coach. And today with us for a second time, we have Rajat Shah. And we're going to be talking about Ashwagandha and Boswellia in this episode. If you haven't heard the previous episode where we spoke about turmeric in detail, because I think turmeric is one of those very, very important supplements and plants that we should be consuming every single day. Today, we're going to be talking about two other plants. One that we are very popular and familiar with, especially from the world of Ayurveda. And the second one that is even still new to me. I haven't explored it either. So let's jump into these and discuss these plants. Rajat, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Hi again, Ashden. Thanks for having me again.
My pleasure. The last discussion was so informative because we deep dived into understanding curcumin, understanding turmeric, understanding the active ingredients in it. When I say ashwagandha, what are the thoughts that come to your mind?
When you say ashwagandha, honestly, there's a lot because, first of all, ashwagandha, a lot of people ask, what does ashwagandha mean? And it actually means the smell of a horse. So it's kind of a weird thing. But, when you think about a horse, you think of youthful kind of an image kind of comes in front of you. And that's really what ashwagandha is. We talked about adaptogens last time. It's one of the most powerful adaptogens, right? So when you talk about the whole rasayana, which is all about, being in restoring or being in a youthful state, that's ashwagandha gets you all of that. And in Latin, it's actually called Withania somnifera. Any guesses on what you think that would mean?
No clue.
It actually means, Withania somnifera means actually in peaceful sleep. So imagine...
Peaceful sleep?
Yeah. So that's, it's kind of a wrong way to say it, but I think it's like a side effect of ashwagandha. And, we all know good sleep means good health. So I think, and only 2% Ashden of ashwagandha is actually known to humans. Only 2% of the plant. The rest is all still a mystery. So even science has not understood, or Ayurveda has not understood, the remaining 98% of that plant. So there's a lot of basic research that is still kind of pending on ashwagandha. But its method of actions are fantastic. So extremely powerful adaptogen. The whole rasayana thing, restores kind of a youthful state, improves your vitality. And more importantly for me, it actually improves sleep, right? So it improves kind of healthy sleep.
And what is it that it actually does? So, for example, I know with our turmeric and curcumin discussion, we spoke about anti-inflammatory, we spoke about antioxidant. What is it that ashwagandha does? What is the feeling that people get? Is it something that is preventive in nature from a health disease, or is it something that makes you feel good?
No, so it does actually multiple different things. One of the most important things is it does improve your reduces your stress rather. It doesn't improve your stress, I was going to say. It reduces your stress, right? So it definitely improves, like I say, your state of being is the way I like to call it, or I understand it better. And, we've done some trials, which I'm going to talk about. It actually, in those trials, we've seen that it improved sleep. It improved, reduced stress. It, improved and overall, it actually also improved your happiness, which was also interesting. And these all validated, those fun validated scales that you can use when you're doing these trials. So a lot of different things, right, that it can actually do for you. And there are different forms in which you can do it. It actually is great for, a lot of athletes and sports people also take ashwagandha because it helps with muscle, development, etc. So there are lots, literally, it's funny when you talk about a lot of these herbs and you start listing everything it does and people are like, what, it does everything. There are people who actually say that, how can a herb do everything? But I'm like, it does, it really does. It's a great herb, and it's unlike turmeric. It's actually something that is not part of your ahar, right? So in Ayurveda, you have ahar. It's not something you consume. So ahar is anything you eat, right? Anything that
so a
you
daily
consume.
Thing, on a daily basis.
Correct. So ashwagandha is not something I put in my spice box and I sprinkle it onto things, right? So it's not something that's very accessible that way. But of course,
should we be doing that? Should we be making our sabzi smell like horse?
No, I don't think so. Because again, there are some interesting things about ashwagandha which are less known per se. But no, there are other forms of having it. and you wouldn't want to mix it in. I don't know how it would taste. Honestly, I've never done that experiment, so I don't know how your food would taste with it. Anybody who's tasted ashwagandha tea maybe will be able to tell us better, right?
Yeah, but it's supposed to taste or smell like like the nose of a horse, right? I think that's the...
So ashwagandha, right? The gandha part and the ashwa is like that. Yeah, ashwa meaning horse. Correct.
Correct. So, the reason why I love talking to Rajat is that she's a kindred spirit, because we love geeking out about and understanding the science behind whatever that we're talking about and learning. And Rajat was saying we did a fantastic experiment or a study on ashwagandha.
Yeah.
So Rajat, tell us about that. What is it that you all did and what did you find out?
Yeah, so in our kind of field, we do what we call a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, right? And what that means is we basically take a group of people and we divide them into two halves. And now randomly we will say, okay, so when we divide them up, the division happens automatically. We randomly give them either the product or we give them a placebo, right? And the idea here is that we want to basically reduce the bias. So neither the person taking or the person giving it to them knows what is it that they're getting. So there's zero bias. So these are what you call a randomized placebo-controlled double-blind studies. And not only do they reduce bias, they actually are what we call the gold standard of any clinical trial. So we did a study recently, and in fact, it started at the peak of the pandemic. So last January is when we initiated the study. By the time we enrolled our subjects and we started the trials, it was around March, April. And what was very interesting is that one of the metrics that we were measuring was stress, right? So we wanted to make sure that we take people that have moderate amount of stress, at least in their lives. And when we intook the people, so on an average, your stress levels should be around 13 for your population. Okay, and there's a scale called the perceived stress scale. So it's a validated scale that helps you, it's like one of those questionnaires that you answer, but it's validated across, millions of studies to say that it gives you proper results. So the perceived stress scale should really be around 13 on an average of your population. At the beginning of the pandemic, when we started the study, that stress level was 18 or 19 for all of our subjects, right? So this was around, I think, more than 100 subjects that we did the study on.
No, out of how many is the scale based on?
The scale,
so 15?
Scale like 28, 30, we would have said, boss, you need to get, hospitalized. Like there's something wrong. So, so 18 is also very high. But, like when you think about 13 to 18, it's quite a high thing. And initially when we started looking at this, we were like, okay, maybe it's India. Everybody is stressed in India. So it's maybe an Indian thing. Correct. And but at the end of our study, so this is after 3 months of giving the product to these people, we actually saw that in the people taking the product, the stress levels dropped to around close to 13. While in the other who are just taking placebo, it stayed around that 18, 19 number. And this is by, I would say, like May, June, right? Where things actually started relatively opening up. More was known about the pandemic, what's going on. So it was a very telling sign, right? Both the fact that in the beginning of the pandemic, the stress levels were higher, and the fact that a product like ashwagandha was able to reduce that stress level significantly. And then, of course, it didn't just reduce the stress. We also did what we call the Pittsburgh Sleep Index. That's another validated scale. We saw a significant improvement in the sleep. We also saw a significant improvement, like I said, in the happiness, which is another scale called the Oxford Happiness Scale. So across all of these scales, like amazing results. And you were like, wow, like ashwagandha is doing its job. Like this is what has been studied by Ayurveda for 6,000 years, right? It's been used in Ayurveda for exactly this, and it is doing this. But one other indication that Ayurveda points towards is improvement in cognitive health. So what we also did is for the same set of people, we subjected them to a battery of cognitive assessments. So it's like one of those games, you play where you're supposed to match a shape faster or find the pattern fast, and you do those things. So again, we take baseline numbers. So we said, okay, when they start, before they take the product, what is that? We test in the middle and we test at the end. And again, in the arm of the study, which was taking the product, significant improvements in recall, so remembering what was happening, and a significant reduction in errors. So they were making less mistakes on these tests, which basically showed an improvement in focus, right?
Correct.
So these are kind of all the different ways ashwagandha works. And it does that by what we call these vithinolites. So there are about, at least in the science, well documented is about 9 vithinolites, which is what a lot of products would test against. We've been able to identify about 20 vithinolites, right? And it's a mixture of these vithinolites and one specific one, vithinolite A, which is what makes ashwagandha work, right? Gives it that kind of superpower that it does. Again, having said that, I'm also saying that only 2%, 3% of the plant is known. So there has to be maybe some other factors that also influence the method of action of that product or that phytonutrient.
Correct. And Rajat, is it like a certain kind of ashwagandha does this and a certain kind of ashwagandha does something else? For example, in ginseng, there is a Korean ginseng, which is different from an Indian ginseng, which is different from a red ginseng.
Yeah.
So what is the same thing in ashwagandha as well? Do you find different plants with different vithinolites?
No, so in ashwagandha, so actually ashwagandha is known as Indian ginseng, by the way. It's also called Indian ginseng. Right? So it's kind of, that's why when you look at ginseng, it's again that same story of a very good adaptogen. So that's kind of what ashwagandha does. And yes, when you look at the roots to the leaves, every part of the plant has a different percentage of vithinolites. But Ayurveda tells you that for internal consumption, so if you had to make a cream out of it or something like that, you could use other parts. But for internal consumption, what comes out of the bark is very important, right? Okay. So we take the extract out of the bark. And then, like I said, there is vithinolite A, which is one of the most potent vithinolites. Now, the problem with vithinolite is that vithinolite A is that once you take it, within an hour, it gets out of your body, right? So it doesn't stay. So how do you enjoy this kind of state of being when it's not staying in your body for too long? So how do you make sure that it's getting absorbed to the maximum extent? And that's where there's this whole concept of sustained release, right? So sustained release is nothing but, like if you were to take something that is, say, 500 milligrams twice a day. But I think like, again, we don't want people to take things twice a day because it's just inconvenient. So can I give you something that's 1,000 milligrams at the beginning of the day? And now it's basically you swallow it, you have it. And there's technology which now allows it to slowly release the product into your body. So it's the same thing with caffeine. Like, imagine when we drink caffeine, we have a nice cup of it and we're great for an hour. And then slowly we start seeing the caffeine crash and we feel like reaching out for that next cup of caffeine. So the same problem, right? So if you had a sustained release caffeine, which we actually do, we've not come out with it yet. But when you have a sustained release caffeine, you could enjoy the effect of caffeine with a much lower dose, right? Because you don't need that heightened state. You don't need that jitteriness, right? So you could reach a certain level and less amount. You can also have it slowly release in your body and actually avoid a lot of issues that come with, say, having those caffeine crashes or having the jitteriness when you're having, multiple cups a day. So the same concept here. So that's called your sustained release. So we've actually been able to create a sustained release version of the ashwagandha. So now when you take the ashwagandha, it's actually going to stay in your bloodstream for a very long time. It will slowly keep releasing. And therefore, you'll have slow and, measured amounts of vithinolite A coming into your body, which then gives you the effect that it does. So when you take it in the morning to evening, it's kind of like imagine being like in an all-time focus. Like I would love to see how this product would work for students, who are in immense stress today, studying, how does it improve their recall, their focus, gives them better sleep still. So there's a lot of benefit and a lot of further research that can support what we're trying to do here.
Very interesting. Fascinating. And how is ashwagandha typically consumed now? Is it always consumed as a supplement, as a pill? How are people consuming ashwagandha right now?
It's a good question. I think ashwagandha is becoming popular in teas. I think there are lots of brands that have started adding it to teas. I think, to be quite honest, in the past, the Western world has adopted ashwagandha better as a supplement. In India, it has still been only accessible via your, Ayurvedic doctors who would give it to you. So that's how ashwagandha is known. And I don't think it's something that you would just open up your pantry and, it's kind of available to you. So it's not something that I can go
Correct.
to a kirana dukan also and say, meko ashwagandha de do. So that's not how widespread the use is. So Ayurveda would be one way, going to an Ayurvedic doctor, getting a supplement, of course, now that they are available in India. And in the Western world, ashwagandha, because especially, like I said, in sports nutrition, it has been a big thing. It actually can improve your muscle, your muscle mass, your performance itself as well. So it's been used in sports supplements for quite some time.
I love it because we have a doctor that comes on our Habit Coach podcast quite frequently, Dr. Vignesh, and he keeps talking about how we should be thinking about health as vitality.
Yeah.
And ashwagandha is one of those things that gives us that vitality, that energy for living. And energy for living is also the same thing as energy for sleep. We think that we have to be tired to sleep. Actually, you need energy to sleep. And it's important to realize these things. We need energy for focus. We need energy for being calm. And that's why this vitality concept is so, so, so important.
Yeah. No, I
Lovely.
agree.
Anything else on ashwagandha that we have not covered that you would like to share with us?
No, I think, there's like I said, even I'm learning a lot more. What's been very interesting for me on this journey, coming from the complete non-medicine background, having that interest has now still allowed me to kind of explore these things. So what I didn't know, like even 2 years ago, I'm learning so much more. So it's a process for me to learn a lot more about these herbs and what they can do as well. So I think whatever I can do to kind of spread that understanding better is what I'm here for. But we can, of course, do a much more deeper dive. I'll let you know when I've found out more on the herb for us to do that.
After the next one. After the next study.
Done.
So tell us about the second herb that you wanted to talk about, Boswellia. Am I pronouncing it right?
Yes, you are. So that's what, it's actually Boswellia serrata. And generally, whenever I tell Boswellia serrata, people are like, Boswellia what? Right? It's, again, it's actually grown in, I think, the hilly regions in India. It's a large tree that grows. And you actually have to make an incision in the bark of the tree, much like you would do like for honey or maple. And then it oozes out like this very gummy substance, which is collected in this kind of a bamboo basket. It drains out, what is not required, and then it solidifies into these oleoresins, which are called guguls. Correct? So again, Ayurveda has known Boswellia for a long time. It's actually an amazing anti-inflammatory. So similar to turmeric, it would do a fantastic job for your joint health as well. But one of the areas where Ayurveda also prescribes is for your gut health. Now, gut health has become quite a big topic recently, right? Everybody talks about this. And I've been fascinated with it myself. We can explain a lot. If you have a good gut, everything kind of works in the body. So Boswellia actually can help, you can think of it like a prebiotic, where it can, it's not only anti-inflammatory, but it can also work as a prebiotic and helping maintaining the organisms or the biome in your gut. And if you think about the gut-brain axis, again, everything is synergistic at the end of the day. So if you have a healthy gut, a lot of things follow as a function of that, So again, healthy brain function, healthy joints, healthy skin, correct? Healthy digestive functions. So that's kind of where Boswellia can also work, and it's relatively less known in this area. It's only kind of in the head of all these Ayurvedic doctors and less in the market as a product for gut.
And is it something that is very popular abroad that is now coming to India as a supplement, or is it something that is still very under the radar across the board?
Yeah, no, it is quite, especially in gut, it is quite under the radar, Ashton. Again, for us, we have done more than 3 to 5 years of research on this. So we've started with, doing research in, animals to check on so these was like done in rats, where we check on how is the product working. We have done in vitro and in analysis to check, how is it working in the upper gut, like H. pylori, a bacteria, which is a very common infection of the upper gut. is something also we
Correct.
saw very positive results with. So no, it's not very well known in the gut space. It is extremely popular in joint health as an anti-inflammatory, like much like turmeric would be internationally as a drug. But Boswellia, when you tell people, they're like, "What is Boswellia?" Right? So there's very less known about it.
And is it for H. pylori? Is it something that's had as a supplement, or is it something that is chewed? Or it's a resin, right? Ultimately,
it's an oleoresin. But again, the same problem. This, in fact, compared to ashwagandha, Boswellia does suffer from the problem of bioavailability. So, the raisins kind of, you have to break it down into a form that's palatable and can be eaten. Second is, you still, once you do that, it does not become absorbed in your body very well. So that's why you have to work on the bioavailability of the product. And also it's not a very good tasting product. So some form of taste masking to give it a more neutral taste is better, so that, when you do add it to your tea or you do add it to other things, it's not going to leave you with a bad taste in your mouth.
Interesting. Because these resins are it's a completely different world altogether from what we're used to in the form of herbs, etc. I remember chewing mastic gum. Mastic gum again is great for your H. pylori and is a great substitute for chewing gum and things like that. Yeah. So I think these resins are going to be a big thing going ahead as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, even antioxidant, Boswellia is another great antioxidant as well. So all of these, when you think about between ashwagandha, turmeric, Boswellia, a lot of anti-inflammatory action, a lot of antioxidant action, ashwagandha being a very potent adaptogen, but Boswellia specifically also exerts the effect of a prebiotic to a large extent. And if you let me kind of dive slightly bit further into how it does that. So there are these major boswellic acids in Boswellia. So again, the percentage combination of how you're getting these boswellic acids is AKBA, BBA. It sounds like I'm, abusing someone right now. But these are the different types of boswellic acids, and a combination of these is what allows you to get the benefit.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these are things that you extract out of it, or these are things that you keep in the natural way itself? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, no, you can extract them out of it. So what you do is when we work with like a Boswellia extract. So again, a Boswellia oleo gum raisin has got nothing done to it, right? It's in the absolute natural form. Then you have a basic Boswellia extract, which is just now removed things that are not important and given you a very potent form of Boswellia. But then if you take it another step further, you can look at these boswellic acids and create a very specialized combination of these where you're harnessing the power of the very specific acids of which the action is known. So you now know that you are exerting a very specific effect that you want on your body using these boswellic acids. So then it becomes kind of like a third level extraction where you've now not only gotten a potent form, but you've also been able to create a special combination of these boswellic acids. Yeah, so you can go as deep as you want literally into these things, right? But at some point you say, okay, this is the max, because if you start messing around with it too much, you may again, lose the naturalness. You may end up, not maybe getting some of the other unknown factors which gives it the effect.
Absolutely. Like you said with ashwagandha also, there's just so much that we don't know about the plant, right? And we don't know what the mechanisms are. We're still scratching the surface in these things. So it's so interesting to understand these. And one last question I had was, any people who should not be trying these out?
No, so both, ashwagandha, Boswellia are they're what we call is generally regarded as safe. They're definitely, like I said, ashwagandha and Boswellia are not part of your, they're not part of your diet, right? So there's not something you take. But there are generally no contraindications when you take them. If you take a good quality product, so check. And I know we've talked about, hopefully in the future we can do something where we can educate people more on how we can read labels. So definitely read, understand what's there in the product, how much percentage of the product is there. And then question, so if it's saying 20%, then what is there in that 80%? Understand how to read those INS values, You'll get a lot more understanding. Is everything they're using, is it food grade, or there are a lot of synthetic excipients added? So I think that's where you have to look at. So I wouldn't say every product is safe, but you definitely have to sit and understand, what are you getting out of this?
It's so interesting. I just picked up a bottle of ashwagandha to see what is written on it.
Yeah. And if I understand that the ashwagandha bottle that you did pick up, I think it's a very generic ashwagandha. Like it's just a root powder. I don't think that had anything enhanced or anything very specific in it.
No, it just says ashwagandha root.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's just a root powder. So, ghar ke mixer maybe I can get a root powder, mix it, and then take a certain measure. Yes, it is giving you the advantage of giving you the pre-measured dose. But they are not telling, or we are not understanding the fact that vithinolide A, which is your potent, the actual active in ashwagandha, it's exiting your body within an hour. So how are you getting the benefit from it? Right? Correct.
Absolutely. So there is a spectrum of how can you improve on this. And I think it's important to start that journey down the spectrum. Like I keep saying, these are things that we should all experiment with. And through experimentation, you can learn on how you feel and how you react with it.
Yeah.
Is it something that is it affecting your sleep? Is it making you sleep better? Is it giving you more vitality? So what I want the listeners to take away from this is that we have so many options. We should start the process of experimenting.
Yeah.
Start with an open mind, look at it, because we are doing such fantastic work in trying to get these active compounds out and make a difference in people's lives. Lovely. Rajat, I loved talking to you and geeking out about ashwagandha and Boswellia. How can people get in touch with you? How can people try out your products, etc.?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ashton. It was a pleasure. To get in touch with me, please follow us on @Nature and Thought on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can also reach out to me at rajat@natureandthought.com. And you can visit our website on natureandthought.com. We haven't launched our Ashwagandha and Boswellia products, but they're coming out soon. So stay in touch and we'll be able to tell you more about this once these products are coming out.
The turmeric product is launched?
Yes, it is. It's on the website.
Where can we buy it from?
natureandthought.com. Yeah, and we'll soon be launching this on Amazon and things because I love using Amazon for all my shopping. So I know that's not something we can avoid. So we'll be putting it out on Amazon.com soon as well.
Yeah, we have a small Amazon depot in our house now.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you, Rajat. Thank you for joining us on the Habit Coach podcast.
Thanks, it was great.
So start these habits and share with us your progress using the hashtag #TheHabitCoach. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are @IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com, or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME180. That's Awesome180.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'd like to thank the sponsor on the network this week, Credencia. Thank you so much for making this possible. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus was joined by actress Shreya Pilgaonkar to talk about her career in acting. On Begin the Journey, Ashish Vidyarthi lists down the modern concepts of friendship and how one can choose the right friend circle in life on Begin the Journey. On The Habit Coach, Ashton Doctor was joined by Aisha Bilamoria to talk about running and developing an athletic mentality. Farhad and Sunitra are joined by LGBTQ workplace advocate Suresh Ramdas to discuss the new normal in queer relationships on GayBCD. On Tere Mere Raste, Keshav Chaturvedi takes us to the riverbanks of Banaras and describes the soulful mornings to us. And finally, on the Positively Unlimited podcast, Chetna Chakravarti takes the fear out of the word responsibility. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Feeling overwhelmed, anxious, struggling with too many obstacles, don't know where your life is headed? Well, if you are dealing with one or all of these, tune into the Positively Unlimited podcast, because in each episode, I share a life lesson, a life hack, a pro tip that can help you get your life back on track. All episodes are available on the IBM website, IBM Podcast app, or wherever it is that you get your podcast from.